That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another special episode of That Sounds Fun. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I'm so happy to be here with a fun bonus episode on this Fun Friday. Today on the show, my friend Savannah Guthrie is back. You know and love Savannah from the Today Show. And last year, I got to talk with her about her New York Times bestselling book, Mostly What God Does. You need to go back and listen to that one if you haven't yet. It is so special. Episode 863, actually her first interview about Mostly What God Does. So it is just beautiful. And now she has a brand new kids book out this week called Mostly What God Does Is Love You. You guys, listen, this book is the sweetest. You absolutely need one on your shelf, in your library, for your friends. It's beautiful. It was really fun to get to catch up with her for a few minutes at the Hephzibah House in New York City. If you're following along in the TSF Season Guidebook, well, this is a drop-in, so there's no page for this one because it's a bonus, but you're welcome to write wherever you want to. Here's my conversation with our friend, Savannah Guthrie.
That sounds fun.
Okay, Savannah, so I'm jumping in here in the studio with you. Thanks for making time to come talk to That Sounds Fun, friends.
Anytime you call me, I am here.
You're so, that is actually true. You're 2 for 2.
I am. And
So I
try me for 3 for 3. I'll be here. You'll be like, why is she there? We didn't even invite her.
Here's what we got to do. Last time we talked about your book, Mostly What God Does. This is Mostly What God Does is Loves You. But when you were here, it was your first interview.
Yes.
And you were so nervous about how this book was going to do.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the stats or can I tell the stats?
Oh my gosh. Now I don't want to tell them.
Over 100,000 copies sold. Over 100,000 copies sold, Savannah. Over 9 weeks on New York Times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tell me you're on this side. Because so many people are doing things that they're brave about and don't know how it's going to go. And that's what you did. And look at this.
I mean, it's like, it really, the whole thing blew me away. And it's such a God thing. Like,
Yeah.
Of course you did. Because it's like, it's so ridiculous that I wrote a book about faith and, I was so nervous to put myself out there because I didn't know how people would receive that from me. Plus, it's such a tender topic and it's not a book to proselytize in any way. It's really just a series of essays and reflections more about what I've gotten wrong on my faith journey than what I've ever gotten right. And so to put yourself out there to talk about your faith is like about as vulnerable as you can be.
Yes.
It's like, here's my heart.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And you may not agree with me.
You may not agree with me.
Right.
You may have all kind of opinions about me. And or maybe I was so afraid. I'm like, please don't anyone think I'm like trying to hold myself up as some example or like some goody or like, a religious person that's doing everything right. Like, oh, no, I'm a mess. I'm a total mess. I'm what you shouldn't do. But here's what I found out. Mostly what God does is love me.
Yeah.
And this is this transformative message. So I did it. I was so afraid. You were my first interview. You were so sweet. I mean, I think I probably cried through the whole thing. And it was astonishing to see what happened. I mean, the first day, Amazon broke.
Literally.
They ran out of books.
And they had bought a lot. Just for people to know, it wasn't that they were holding 50. They had a lot of books and they were gone.
Yeah, and I mean, the publisher, the head of HarperCollins was on the phone with the Amazon people being like, you have stock.
Yeah.
They went to like a 4th printing by the end of the week.
Yes.
I think we sold over 250,000 copies.
As of today. Wow.
It is like, it was, and the most beautiful thing is just that this simple little book that I was afraid of to send out into the world and then got to be where I was kind of embarrassed. Like, is this silly? Is this dumb? Like, whatever it was, it's just my editor at one point said, like, I guess he said, we don't have to wonder anymore if it's going to be a success. He said, all we have to wonder now is just exactly what is God up to here?
Wow.
And I saved that text because I just loved that. And that's how I loved writing it. And it was an emotional experience for me and a very special, tender moment between God and me that I do not take for granted because I don't think I could write it today. It was a moment in time. And I was not only remembering, and it was like decades of like life and things that I had thought over the years.
Yeah.
But I was learning in the moment too. I was like absorbing. Everything felt like so alive. And this, like, God was like, it was having like a one-on-one clinic. And I was learning so much, and it was all getting, and it, like, I wrote 50,000 words in 5 months that came just, it wasn't easy or effortless, but it was fast. And it was just, the whole thing was so special. And what I treasure most about it is that it was like him and me hanging out, having a special time together. And I really, really treasure it. And I've gotten a lot of beautiful letters.
Oh, I am sure.
From people telling me their stories. And when I see the letters, I write them back. I try to, if I've seen it, I wrote you back.
Yeah.
Because I'm so grateful that people have been kind to me.
Yes.
I was so afraid.
I mean, people should memorize, whether you succeed or fail at anything. The sentence is, now we don't wonder about success, whether you succeeded or failed. Now we don't wonder. Now we wonder what God's up to. Yeah. I mean, that is, I'm putting that in my journal.
Oh, my
That is so
editor
helpful.
is like Yoda.
Yeah.
He has all of these like little pithy sayings, and they're really funny, and some are irreverent. Like he'd go, well, I'd say, I just writing all this stuff. I don't know. I'm trying to get it in organized. He'd be like, just, write. He goes, write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah, that's it.
He claims this is like a Hemingway quote or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I took him at his word. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm just kidding. I did not write drunk, but, yeah.
But writing at night, writing when you're less tied up.
Yes.
And then you edit when you realize other people are going to see it.
Yes, edit later.
Yeah.
Okay,
in this kid's book, I have to read you my favorite page that just brought tears to my eyes. It says, mostly what God does is love you. And you say, you can't see him with your eyes or touch him with your hands, but you feel him in your heart and you know him in your mind. Will you talk about that like, I don't know why the know him in your mind part, like we can know him. Will you talk about that for a second? And why do you want to say that to kids?
And if you're going to cry, I'm going to cry.
Sorry. I didn't mean to. What are the plans?
Because our relationship with God is so personal.
Yeah.
And the way I know him is probably different than the way you know him. So God, I think I write a lot about in the grown-up book about God speaks our language and he knows how to reach us. And he doesn't, I don't mean he speaks our language like he speaks English. I mean, he speaks Annie.
Yes.
And he speaks Savannah.
Yeah.
And so when I say you know him in your mind, it's like this beautiful relationship and friendship that you hold in your heart, and that it's like you don't know why.
Yeah.
You can't see him, you can't touch him, but you feel him and you know him. You know his personality, and you come to depend on his character traits. And that's what, even though this is a book for children, I hope that the character of God is revealed in the sense of he is big and you are small, but you're never too small for him. He is dependable. He is faithful. He is here for you.
Yeah.
He loves you, whether you're good or whether you're bad. And all of those basic tenets of his character, those are things that we can know.
Yeah.
There is a God that we can know. And I treasure that. And one of the reasons why I was willing to do this children's book, and it felt like a natural extension, was because the book message, mostly what God does is love you. It's a simple message, not easy, but simple, but it translates, and it's simple enough that a child can understand.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that, it would be a comfort to kids and place them in a proper perspective in their world. This is not a commentary on our culture or anything, but it's just like I feel better myself knowing that it doesn't all rise and fall on me. I like knowing that there's a God that holds the world in his hands and holds me too.
Yes.
And I want my kids to have that perspective because I can't always be there for them. Yeah. I want to be. I hope I am, but I know that that's not reality. So I want them to know that God in their mind. I want them to have that friendship with God. Yeah. I mean, my dedication is to my kids, Vale and Charlie, and everyone everywhere making friends with God. And I worried when I wrote that, I thought, is that irreverent? Does that not give enough deference to God?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I remember the hymn, What a Friend We Have in Jesus.
Oh.
This knowledge of God is friendship. It's friendship, this most beautiful friendship that God pays us the eternal honor of entering into with us.
Yeah.
So I know my place. I want my kids to know my place. But this beautiful relationship that's possible, you carry it with you, and it can get us through a lot of difficult moments. And so that's what I kind of just want this to be, a gentle introduction, to families and to kids. And I also always think about myself reading these books, and you're so tired, and you're one baby's in one arm and your book's in the other. I hope that some weary mom or dad one day, like the words leap off the page for them.
Yeah, that's it. Or for aunts.
Yes.
For me's in the world who go like, this made me cry.
Absolutely.
This is for all of us.
Yes. I mean, I actually, it's so fun to do a children's book, and you have a children's book coming out, so you know this too. You get to, they really do ask you, what do you think about this illustrator? And you get to be really involved in it. And I wanted the cover to be mostly words, because I imagined it on a shelf like a poster, and that you would walk in and it would say mostly what God does is love you. It's more words than pictures, because everyone can understand in one sentence. And can you imagine you're having a hard day and you look and it just reminds you?
Yes.
And lots of days, probably most days, you just pass right by it and it'd be next to the hungry caterpillar and every other thing. But imagine one day it leaps off the page because God decides to give it a little wink.
Yes.
And that's part of the reason I love the book, and I feel that connection with it.
That sounds fun.
And now back to finish up our conversation with Savannah.
That sounds fun.
We say a lot around here, we talk about sneaky Jesus, about
Yes.
doing Jesus-y things.
Yes.
But not having to be very forward about it all the time.
Yes.
This is a sneaky Jesus, put it on your shelf, and God will remind people.
Yes.
Mostly what he does is love them.
At that moment that you need it,
Yeah.
he'll be like, I can work with that.
I love it.
That's just like, I feel like faith, especially with kids, I mean, I grew up in the church, and I had a very traditional kind of evangelical upbringing, and there was a lot about that I love and still treasure to this day. The rhythms, the hymns, so many things. But there was also aspects of it that were really difficult, and I had to overcome, my fear, so much fear and guilt. And I'm not saying the church put that on me. I'm saying that's how I received it.
Yeah.
And so I like this idea of introducing this God that people can meet on their own terms. And I just love the idea of opening that conversation, because as a parent, like, I want to start that conversation. I take that responsibility very seriously. But God's going to finish that conversation.
That's good.
And actually, Carson Daly, who is a dear friend of mine and works on the Today Show with me, and he's very devout Catholic, and he told me this prayer that he says for his kids, and I was like, man, that is so good. And I was like, I'm stealing that. And I say it now, and it's such an evangelical-ish prayer that it makes me laugh that he says it, but he says he prays that that his kids will have at some point a real connection with the Holy Spirit, that they will meet the Holy Spirit and form that connection. And I'm like, yeah, that is a very specific, really excellent prayer. I don't pray that with my kids necessarily at their ages right now, but I've incorporated into my own prayers for them, because I realize, like, oh, that's what happened to me. Like, I don't know why, how, and I actually joke in the book, mostly what God does. I'm like, some aspects of my religious upbringing could be so off-putting, and I was so afraid that how I ended up in a lifelong friendship and relationship with God is a miracle. Like, only God could have redeemed that. Like, only God could have pulled this off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, how could I have, why would you even want to? Like, only God could have been like, yeah, I got this.
Yes.
And somehow, and I think that's what that was. Like, I think that's like the Spirit touching your spirit and making that lifelong connection. And when that is formed, you can have your highs and lows. You can have your seasons of distance. I certainly have. And I don't mean a week or two. I mean sometimes years.
Yes.
And disappointment and all of the things, because it's a relationship after all. But like that core connection. So I'm hoping that this is a way to introduce the topic of faith, introduce who God is. And I really believe that, like, God will step into that space and fill it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I want to ask you this last thing. We're doing this year on That Sounds Fun, we're doing winter, spring, summer, fall. And we're about to transition to spring. We're transitioning seasons. You have transitioned. You have a new book. You have a new co-host.
Yes.
Hoda left. We have a new president. There's a lot of new season for us.
Yeah.
Talk about how you are the voice of peace. I heard David and Sissy say that. Like, how do you find peace when a season is shifting like that with a new book, with new everything?
Well, I don't know if I mean, that's such a wonderfully nice compliment you've given me, but I don't, it's hilarious because it's like, I feel so much internally like I'm like, like
Sure.
I feel anxiety and I feel all kinds of, change. But first of all, like God is the constant. I mean, I really do think that when everything seems like it's swirling around us and it's so overwhelming, I would tell my kids and I tell myself, like, back to basics, back to the core. What do we know for sure? And start there as the foundation. But I also would say, and spring is my favorite season, change is exhilarating. It's terrifying, but change is life. So when Hoda left, I was in despair because I love her so much. And to be honest, to me, she's the star of the show. And I've always been the number two. I've always been the junior partner. And I like that because I get that role and it makes me happy. And so it was scary for me to see her go. And then I'm like, well, is it all kind of rising and falling on me now? I don't want that to be the case. And so I have been really afraid. But now with Craig coming in, he's perfect. And it's this perfect partnership.
Yes.
And it's, I look at us as total equals and doing this work together. And it's a different kind of relationship. But I love it. And the change has been great. I mean, to me, Hoda felt like irreplaceable. And she is in so many ways. And we love her and we wrapped our arms around her and we like held her by her ankles. Please don't go, please don't go, please don't go. And we also have been thrilled and so excited to have Craig there. And it's also been invigorating and exciting and it's led to change. And so I think that in our best moments, looking at any kind of change, to see the positive of that, and is that open door and opportunity, and I think that's what I'm trying to do too, But we all have our moments. Also, just gentleness with ourselves, and it's a lot. I mean, there's just so much incoming in every direction, and I think just trying to settle down and just remember the basics because the fundamentals are with you, even in the seasons of change. Your foundation is there, and reminding ourselves of like the truths that we know, and holding on to them.
Yeah, that's so helpful. That's why books like this matter because I can like, okay, in change of season, I can still remember mostly what God does is love me. And that is part of this too.
Yes, and that does not change with the weather or the storms or the sunshine. Adversity, prosperity, all of those things can be challenging. But the rock bottom, foundational, non-shaking belief is that God loves you. He's for you and he is with you. And it's easy to forget that. This world almost demands that we forget that. Especially when you look around and you see a world that makes no sense. And a world sometimes, frankly, where you're like, what God? Where? Well, that's what I'm like. Don't think globally. Think locally. Who's the God that I know? And how have I seen him today? And if I haven't seen him, how could I step out in faith and ask to see him today? And I believe that is a prayer that he is always willing to answer, one way or the other, maybe with a little wink.
Savannah Guthrie's a preacher, everyone. I mean, come on. That's so good. You guys, isn't she the best? Don't you love? I mean, this is one of my favorite things about her. The woman you experience through your television set is the same woman you get to experience in person with her when we sit down and chat. And that is one of the highest compliments I can give, is she is exactly who you hope she would be. And make sure you grab a copy of her new kids book, Mostly What God Does Is Love You, wherever you love to buy books. Go follow Savannah on social media and tell her thank you for being on the show again. And again, if you haven't listened to her on the first time she was on That Sounds Fun, that's episode 863. We've linked that in the show notes below for you. Now, if you've got any questions from this episode, just drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app if you're a Spotify listener, or send them to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'll try to answer them there. If you need anything else from me, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere you need me, that's where you can find me. I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me is we kick off a very fun weekend celebrating Mary-Kate Morrissey finishing up the role of Elphaba in Wicked on Broadway. So we've got stuff all weekend. Happy to celebrate her. Jump in with us and celebrate her too on social media if you get a chance. What a very fun weekend we have ahead of us. Y'all have a great weekend as well. We'll see you back here on Monday with one of our favorites, the newest member of the Hall of Fun, John Eldridge. We'll see y'all Monday.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Check 1, 2 on the microphone. Annie F. Downs in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right. Oh man, that sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh.